Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we would like to present our material about language change. Before we start to the material, let we introduce ourselves. My name is Muhammad Firman Maulana and my partner is danu Irawan. We are from NIN group. Okay, now let's start the material about language change. Talk of language change. In reality, it is not so much that language itself changes as that speakers and writers change the way they use the language. Speaker innovation is a more accurate description than language change. Speakers innovate sometimes spontaneously, but more often by imitating speakers from other communities. If their innovation are adopted by other and diffused through their local community and beyond into other communities, then linguistic change is the result. So, language change is the branch of linguistics that is expressly concerned with change in a language. Next is variation and change. Language change happens over time and is also governed by social and physical circumstances. Sociolinguistic study why particular change spread and how they spread. Two phenomena of change are discussed in this chapter. There are post-vocalic R and the spread of vernacular forms. Post-vocalic R spread and its status. In many parts of England and Wales, the standard English has lost the pronunciation of R after vowels in words like star or card. The loss of post-vocalic R has begun in the 17th century in the southeast of England, but areas at the southwest of England are pronouncing the post-vocalic R. The change, however, is moving slowly towards the west. The accent of post-vocalic R are called rhotic. In England, rhotic accents are described as rural and uneducated. However, in USA, it is extensively used. Many US accents are rhotic. A research made in 1960 found out that rhoticism is regarded as prestigious in New York. It was used by the young people of the upper middle class in their formal and casual speech, which indicate that it is spreading. So, this linguistic variation proves the fact that complexity of variation and language change, which England are non-rhotic and USA is rhotic, because England expect rhotic are unprestigious, even if USA expect rhotic is prestigious. Next is the spread of vernacular forms. Vernacular pronunciations also spread in speech communities. A linguistic survey made in 1950 in Martha's Vineyard showed that the community used the vernacular form of the earlier generation to mark itself from the tourists or visitors to the island. Speakers changed their pronunciation to seem more conservative that is associated with the area in the past. Even if this pronunciation has died out, it was used to express solidarity and loyalty to the rural values of the place. Therefore, they pronounce words like light as close to light and house as close to use. The people of Vineyard unconsciously valued the feature of vowel centralization in their speech. So this linguistic variation proves the fact that how the vernacular feature can acquire social significance and convert prestige. Okay, next is how do we change spread? There are three ways to change spread. First is from group to group. Second, from style to style. Third is from word to word. Now first we talk about from group to group. In from group to group there are 3 points to describe. First is any particular change spread simultaneously to different direction but not with the same rate. Social factors such as gender, age, and status affect the rate. Second, in any speech community, the waves intersect. A speaker simultaneously belongs to different groups like social, age, and region groups. A change may spread to any of these dimensions and into other groups. Third, linguistic change infiltrate group from the speech of people on the margins between social or regional group via the middle people who have contact in more than one group. Now, second, from style to style. In the speech of particular individual, it suggests the change spread from one style to another, say from more formal speech to more casual speech, while at the same time it spreads from one individual to another within a social group, and subsequently from one social group to another. And the third, from word to word. Sound change can also spread from one word to another. It spread through the different word one by one. This is called lexical diffusion. When a sound change begins, all words with the same sound change one by one, not in the same time. For example, in New Zealand, a vowel change which is currently in progress merged vowel of word beer and beer, beruang, which were distinct. The distinction between rarely and really has already disappeared.
Okay, study language change. Here we have two ways. There are apparent time studies of language change and language change in real time. So, how do we study language change? The first way is apparent time studies of language change. A great deal of linguistic variation is stable, but some is an addition of linguistic change in progress. A steady increase of steady decline in the frequency of a form by age group suggests to a sociolinguistic that a change may be in progress in the speech community, whereas a bell-shaped pattern is more typical of stable variation. It also seemed like that it was spreading through the community because younger people were using more of it than adult people. At this point, it is important to compare this pattern with the normal pattern of different ways of speaking at different ages. Comparing the speech of people from different age group can be useful clue then to language change. This has been called the apparent time method of studying change. Differences between the speech of older people and younger people are interpreted as indication of change in progress. Younger speakers tend to use more of the newer or innovative forms, and the older speakers use more of the older, conservative forms, the ones they adopt in their own teenagers years. And the second is language change in real time. Sometimes, however, it is possible to build on the work of earlier linguists when studying change. Dictionaries, which provide a date when a form was first noted, can assist in the tracing change in vocabulary over time. A very reliable method of studying language change is real-time study. This is done by tracing change over time through comparing a sample of people's speech in a time with another similar sample years later. An interesting real-time study was made by Peter Trudgill, who returned to Norwich after 15 years of his study of speech pattern in Norwich. He found out that some of the variation he had noted in his original study had led to linguistic change as he predicted. The vowels of bear and beer, which were distinct, have completely merged in the speech of all speakers except those who belong to the higher social groups. So now the reason for language change. Here have three reasons why language have a change. The first is social status and language change. The second is gender and language change. And the third is interaction and language change. So the first is social status and language change. A linguistic change may enter a community through any social groups. Different types of changes are related to different kinds of groups. Members of the most social status tend to introduce changes into the speech community from a neighboring speech community that has greater status and prestige. For example, lower class speakers are more influential in spreading less conscious linguistic changes. Low-class men adopt speech forms from neighboring local workers to express solidarity. The second is gender language change. Differences in women and men's speeches are another source of variations which can result in linguistic change. Sometimes women are innovators, leading linguistic change, and sometimes men. Women tend to be associated with changes toward both prestige and vernacular norms, whereas men more often introduce vernacular change. In Martha's Vineyard, men's speech led to a change toward vernacular pronunciation. This is done by reviving the older and conservative pronunciation like centralization of vowels. This pronunciation expresses the loyalty to older values. And the third is interactional and language change. Interaction and contact between people is crucial in providing the channels for linguistic change. Linguistic change generally progresses most slowly in tightly knit communities which have little contact with the outside world. Interaction, or lack of it, affect the language changes. For example, affects isolation affects language change in a speech community. For instance, in a tightly knit community, people have less contact with outside world. Now, the cause of the language changes. Here are the 5 factors that cause language to change. The first is economic factor. Speech communities tend to change their utterances to be as efficient and effective as possible, while still reaching community goals. Purposeful speaking, therefore, involves a trade-off of costs and benefits. The second is language contact. Words and contraction are borrowed from one language into another. And the third is geographic separation. When people with one language move away from each other, the language will gradually diverge into separate dialect due to different experiences. The next is cultural environment. As a culture evolves, new places, situations, and objects inevitably enter its language, whether or not the culture encounters different people. And the last is the migration or movement aspect. Speech communities moving a region with a new or more complex linguistic situation will influence and be influenced by language change. They sometimes even end up with entirely new languages, such as Pidgin and Creoles.
Okay, that's all for our material who has been delivered by me and my friend. Thank you for your attention and your passion for hearing our bad voice. See you next time. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.